A brief history of Bonnie Claire Mill Site brought to you by Ghost Town Wonders.
Good morning. Today we're going to take a trip out to a place known as Bonnie Claire. Bonnie Claire was a mill site where they processed ore for surrounding mines. It's about 160, 170 miles north and west of Las Vegas. And it was also a rail stop. We're going to go exploring today. So let's go look at it. I got trusty coffee here to help me make the road trip. And we'll go exploring.
Bonnie Claire was known by several different names, including Thorpe's Wells, Thorpe, Montana Station, Somerville, and Gold Mountain. Mining began in this area around the 1880s, and a small stamp mill was built at this particular site. At the time, it was known as Thorpe's Wells. It served several mines located near Gold Mountain, some 6 miles to the northwest. It operated into the early 1900s when the Bonnie Claire Bullfrog Mining Company purchased the town. A small camp formed and a stage line from Bullfrog to Goldfield ran through the camp, which was then called Thorpe. Another small camp called Somerville also developed about a mile northwest, but it was short-lived. In 1904, the company built a larger mill called the Bonnie Claire, which treated ore from all over the district. A post office called Thorpe was established in June of 1905. The camp grew slowly until September 1906, when the Bullfrog Goldfield Railroad reached the settlement. The new station was called Montana Station, but when a town site was platted the following month, it was called Bonnie Claire. However, the post office wouldn't be renamed from Thorpe to Bonnie Claire until 1909 due to issues with the government. A number of properties began to produce on Gold Mountain, and Bonnie Claire Bullfrog Mining Company built a 20-stamp mill. Those are the ruins that exist today. We'll go exploring that in a little while. A number of mines began to produce in the Gold Mountain district. In particular, those mines, to just name a few, are the Royal Flush, the Rattlesnake Mine, and the Blue Ribbon. Even at its peak of activity, the population never exceeded 100 people. Then the panic of 1907 scared investors away, which caused a suspension in the mining activities in and around the area and dashed the dreams of town promoters. The town limped along with a few residents, but continued only because the railroad passed through this small area. In 1925, the town was boosted by the building of Scotty's Castle, a fantasy house in the green oasis of Grapevine Canyon, some 20 miles to the southwest. For the next 3 years, nearly all the items required in the difficult construction of the elaborate castle arrived at the Bonnie Claire Station over the Tonopah Tidewater Railroad. From there, the supplies were hauled by mule-drawn wagons and four-wheel drive trucks to the site. 1928, the Tonopah and Tidewater Railroad ceased all operations, and then the railroad pulled out of the Bonnie Claire area and the town quickly died. Its post office closed and the railroad tracks were removed by 1931. There was a little bit of activity going on in the early 40s and 50s, but it was short-lived, and since that time the town has gradually deteriorated to what it is now. This is a photo from 1930, kind of shows you the ruins of the town at that time. You'll notice in my next clip, you'll see that I'm taking a photo or video of the exact same building. You can see the resemblance there of the A-frame, which looks exactly the same as I'm wandering around the site. Bonnie Claire was an old rail stop. A couple of buildings still left. Rail stop back in the early 1900s. It was really a place where they could load ore
from the surrounding mines. And also, you might be able to see way back in the distance there, which we'll go explore later, there was an actual mill site. Here's one of the buildings here. You can see it kind of has like an angled head frame. I didn't think they really mined anything here at this particular location. But we'll go explore a little better and see if we can really figure out what appears to be a head frame.
Time and the harsh elements and conditions of the desert really takes a toll on these buildings that are not maintained by anybody.
Don't see much in the way of any machinery that's been left behind. You can see down into the cave. You can see the piping. I don't know if that was for air or what, but again, it kind of surprises me that it would be for mining, because I didn't understand this area to have any mining. You can see there's looked like some kind of a headworks right there that goes up to a head frame. So again, from what I could read, this particular area was just the rail stop. I didn't think there was any mining right here in this particular location.
I'm standing on what I think was an old foundation for the water storage tank. Looking down into that pit, you can see the electrical box there and conduit that goes down. Perhaps it was a pump that went down to a well, and that pipeline was probably the pipeline to discharge water. As I pan across the desert here, you can see the mill in the background. And that old house in the foreground was known as the Husson House. It looks like it has an extension on it with an old vintage trailer. One of the last official residents of Bonnie Claire was Victor Husson, a local miner who lived here in the 50s, along with his wife Millie. Vic Husson died in 1961 and is buried in the nearby town of Beatty. His wife, Millie, saw her final years out in Las Vegas and lived to the ripe old age of 92. You know, as you look around in these buildings, you can kind of get a sense of what life must have been like out there, although it looks very simple for these folks. At the same time, it's not a bad looking home. It was probably very peaceful in the 1950s. Here you can see what looks like a well. When I got looking at it closer and down in there, it looks like a pit that must have been for a water well. As I was walking around this area, I came across a very small cemetery. As you can see, the headstone here shows the very, very short life of a very young person. That headstone looks like it's been redone or modernized. It just looks in too good of a shape for it to be that old, back to from 1911. The other headstone that I found in here was from a person called Dora C. Black, I believe. I couldn't really tell because it looks like somebody shot the sign out, and don't know when they deceased. But those were the only two graves that I saw in the entire area. This is a photo of the old mill that I've been speaking of. The ruins that are left behind, we're going to go explore those. Here's an example of exactly why I love coming out to these places. Look at the fantastic structures that are left behind. We're getting ready to go explore some of that. While it's true, some vandals have come up here and kind of taken things apart and have tagged them, but for the most part, this is a remote enough place that it doesn't seem to be too vandalized. But let's go take a look at what's going on. As I take a walk around these old structures, I just got to kind of get a sense of how noisy it must have been with all the mechanical noise. hardships that the folks endured each day that they were working out here in these conditions. The maintenance that this area required was probably pretty significant as well. I'm sure the mechanical parts probably didn't last long. They were probably always trying to fix things with the tools and materials that they had available to them on site, since it was such a long ways away from any supply areas. As I walk around these sites now, the quietness is almost deafening. No one else is out here. It's a beautiful area, and thoroughly enjoy just walking around looking at the old structures and imagining what these folks had to endure.
And then one of the buildings here that you can see, rock walls. The roof's gone on that one too. Obviously somebody must have cleaned it up because the roof structure is not here on the ground. Some kind of a room. Looks like they had a stovepipe right there. It looks like maybe some storage. On the outside it has an aluminum, what looks like a water storage bin, so I don't know what this is for, other than like maybe it was for food storage for their mess hall.
Well, this concludes my brief history about Bonnie Claire mill site. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Helps out a lot. Thanks.